Welcome, everyone. My name is Vanessa Kiel-Vehar. I am reporting this week from Nebo TV. I'm in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm a community developer, and I'm also the head of the CBA for South Etobicoke. And we are very we're very grateful to have you here today for my first recording. And gratefully, we have with us Idris Orughu, who is a community advocate from the city of Brampton, Canada. And we're going to be asking him some questions, figuring out how he's doing, what his objectives are going forward. And again, we're very, very lucky to have him and taking the time out of his day. So we're going to go ahead and I'll allow him to introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about him. So Idris, welcome.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for having me. My name is Idris Orughu, resident of Brampton. Being involved in community advocacy for quite some bit, and I guess I'm known primarily for the Peel District School Board issues and how we have been able to move the needle with regards to systemic racism that has been pervasive at the district at the board.
Wonderful. Yes, we've heard a lot about the school boards recently, especially with the new, with Doug Ford and having Premier Lecce and everything coming in. And throughout COVID, certainly it's been a bit of an issue. Just to get a little more background on yourself, sir, where are you from originally in Nigeria? Which parts? I know the audience would be really interested to see. And then how long you've been in Canada and any other thoughts you'd like to add on that.
Oh, geez, that's taking me back right now. Of course, I am originally from Nigeria, from Edo State, pretty much the same state as Nekman. My mom is from the eastern part of the country. And my dad is from Edo State. So I'm a complete mixture of the various ethnic groups that make up Nigeria. I have been here right now, 28 years, I believe.
Years.
28 years. So I came here quite young. I went to school here, was schooled in the States, had athletic scholarship in basketball, where I was able to major in biology with a chemistry minor. So here I am. And go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, what an incredible story. I hadn't realized. I read through some of your bios that you had spent some time in the United States, and we'll get into a bit later, maybe some of the comparisons between what we're experiencing in Canada and the US. We in Canada have always been compared to the United States, so there's a lot of overlap and reflections, but I was interested to hear about your history. Definitely, I, as a Canadian, we welcome the Nigerian community often, and I'm always trying to ask questions and probe like a little bit more so I can understand a little bit more of the questions about it. I hope to visit one day. That's one thing I hope to visit.
That would be great. I encourage people to do that.
It's supposed to be majorly wonderful there. And I'm just wondering too, when you came into Canada, and so I guess we can slow it down, or is there anything primarily that you yourself would like to talk about during this interview? Because I'm just going to ask questions maybe about how your advocacy work is going, some of the pain points you've experienced, some things that maybe you'd like to see throughout Ontario now that we have a new political, well, it's not new, Ford is back in, and the municipal elections coming up in October, maybe some of those things, but maybe some work. How did you come to Canada to work here? How did you get involved in the advocacy work that you do now? I'm sure that's a long and exciting story. We'd love to.
Yes. In terms of when I was younger, of course, I went to school and played in the States, but I've often liked Canada, and I had friends and family close ties with Canada. So it wasn't surprising after I was done with college, came to Canada, went back, worked in the States, then came back, decided I definitely love it out here. I would want to settle and raise my family here. I was actually in BC, the Pacific end of the country. I made the move to Ontario, which I thought was the place I actually wanted to be. The biggest question then was the weather, the impact of the weather. Nevertheless, no regrets. I'm happy I came here. With regards to activism, I always say this. I've been asked the question before, how did you get into activism? I said, I did not choose activism or advocacy. It chose me.
It chose you.
It chose me. Being in this country, you pay attention to yourself in regards to your environment, and you constantly see how people treat you and treat others who don't have a voice. So the issues of systemic racism that has been big within the schools in Canada, not just in Ontario. It just so happens that those of us in Peel made it very, very, if I may say, uncomfortable for others who didn't see into what we were asking for. But the issues have been there even before I got involved. And our community has always been trying to highlight these issues, but it fell on deaf ears.
Yeah. I really like how you brought up the fact that myself too, as a community developer, these questions were always asked. How did you get into this? How did you become an advocate for things? And it's oftentimes exactly how you said. It chooses us. It chooses us when we see a lot of things like microaggressions and lack of access to resources and inequities that are happening right under our eyes. And I know the Peel District School Board has like 155,000 some odd employees. It's a large organization. The Toronto District School Board, where I am, I think it's the fourth biggest in the United States, or within North America, including the United States. And we often see things going right underneath the radar. And when we bring these things up, oftentimes there's so many red tape things to get through just for basic justice services. And I can imagine for the African community or any minority community, that it's harder and harder and harder, and those frustrations build. And then we have people like yourself that are professionals that go about things in an appropriate way and still are struggling with the advocacy piece. So I'm wondering, how did you kind of how did you maintain your focus and maintain your goodwill and try and get further results when people are just telling you like, no?
You just hit on a point in terms of the Peel District School Board and Toronto. Toronto District School Board is the largest district school board in the country.
Yeah.
Followed by Peel. Peel is the second largest district school board, 257 schools, 155,000 students with a budget of about $2 billion. Yeah. That's a lot. Okay. So when you look at all of the schools, and in Peel especially, I think Peel, the demographics in Peel, it's heavily weighted towards the racialized community. And you can see why some of this problem. So just to give you the numbers, within Peel, the Black population in Peel within the secondary school students mirrors that of the population, the overall population. So okay. The breakdown is 10% of the student body in the secondary schools make up the Black students.
Okay.
The South Asian is about 45.
Right.
While for white students, I think it's about 17, if I remember correctly. So now that's for the student body. Now, for those who identify in the, for those who identified as part of the educators who voluntarily identified, you will see the lopsidedness in the other side.
Okay.
The white teachers or educators make up about 67%.
Let's see.
So you look at 17% for student body to 67% of the educators. Now, for Blacks, 7%.
For the entire, sorry to interrupt, the entire district school board. So not only are they not getting the type of education culturally, but there's also going to be such a disparity between anything that would come up, because there's a 10%, and that's a large number difference.
It's huge. So you're looking at 17% for student bodies to 67% of educators. Then for Blacks, they make up about 10% of student bodies, then educators 7%. For South Asian community, it's about, I believe, 17%.
Like a third of the ratio.
In terms of that. So when you look at these numbers, it doesn't reflect the overall community. No. It's sort of lopsided, and you can see why people, folks like myself, are saying, wait a minute.
We
have to make some corrections here. Because for a lot of our students who are going through schools, from the guardian counselors to teachers, it's not reflective of their reality.
Okay. I want to touch on something too, just based on that, when I was doing some research on yourself, and something that was really a pain point as well that we do see funneled. And my son, having played football with a lot of predominantly Black schools in Toronto. We see this happen all the time, that when that happens, where there's such a disparity in the school board going all the way to, in one of your interviews, it was mentioned similarly to the United States, that the pipeline to prison, right? And we get involved in all of these things. A lot of people that have never had to worry about these topics, myself included, being a Caucasian female, my mom was an immigrant, but from the United Kingdom, I've never had to struggle. So for me, it's my job as a citizen of Canada to try and empathize and try and understand and really get not only to the roots of these problems, but when you're showing me, Idris, numbers like this, I might not have been aware of, that the disparity is there, the lack of the culturally aware Black even teachers, let alone guidance counselors. Is that a serious concern, that the pipeline to prison, and it sounds harsh, but if they're not getting the resources they need, and please correct me if I'm overstating or if I'm wrong, but what do we do in situations like that, and is it a real thing?
It is a real thing. And the interview you've just quoted was something I did elaborate on. And because as a community, we want to be able to help the weaker members, or the weak members of our community. If everyone is uplifted, we're better as a society, we're better as a community, and as a country, we're better off.
Absolutely.
When anytime you have that huge disparity, there are things you're going to find that may not be common in the affluent areas. We're talking about socioeconomic issues. You know, you cannot separate crime. You cannot separate poverty from crime, whether you like it or not. It's a need for survival. People want to survive, and I know often people will say, "Well, I worked so hard, and why can't you work hard too?" But we're not all endowed with the same abilities. And as a society, one area where Canada has fared better is that we look at the folks at the bottom and say, we want to uplift you. If we have a huge middle, we succeed. If we have a very thin middle and a huge bottom in terms of huge disparities in all of the economic indices, then we have failed as a society.
Yes.
Now you have to deploy more resources to tackling social issues that could have been solved by having a robust middle. And that's where we are. It's better to address these issues when they're starting than to wait for us as a community to be dealing with a lot of social issues, breaking and entering, stealing, gun violence, and all of the vices we have.
Absolutely.
So, not to say certain communities are prone to these issues. Humans are prone to these issues.
Humans are prone to these issues.
Humans are prone to these issues. As you start to unfold and dig deeper, you start to see the breakdown that Blacks don't have a higher crime, they don't have a higher propensity for criminal activities than whites or South Asian or other people. And that when humans are pushed to the end, they will do these things for survival. So as a society, it's incumbent upon us to be able to develop a robust middle so as to avoid some of these societal issues that we have. And that's where we're failing. And that's where you see the United States has failed completely.
Yes. I think that you hit the nail on the head there when you talk about the baseline. So if the baseline human, not any racial divide, if the baseline human is uplifted to a dignified living standard, housing in Canada is a human right. It's not something that has anything to do with income. A lot of successful or so-called successful nations are those that allow the lowest common denominator baseline to be a healthy living wage, such as we always hear about Sweden, Denmark, those kind of countries. And when we have like the huge disparity, I lived in Texas for 7 years, and you see very, very wealthy and very, very poor. And what you mentioned, sir, is you're right. The missing middle is not there. That homogenous, things, and the diseases of poverty are everywhere. You're right. If my children were starving, would I go and steal to feed them? Probably, right? That has nothing to do with it. I agree. So thank you for that. And moving on, I was just thinking, how did you got involved in the Peel District School Board because your children were there? And was there one sort of moment, one breaking point that the advocacy called to you and you're like, now I'm doing something about this?
Yes, in a way. So just like every other citizen, I've heard about these things. I've had my own personal issues with racism. I
Hmm.
have, trust me, is a lot. But that still did not push me into wanting to fight, even though it's bad when you're in that position.
Hmm.
What happened with the Peel District School Board was I was organizing community. I was organizing the community here for a federal election. And Trustee
Okay.
McDonough, yes, and Trustee McDonough came to me. Of course, she's been aware of my work and how effective things I have been, how effective the things I have been doing involved in. And she was having great difficulties at the board in terms of getting community members to attend board meetings regularly.
Okay.
And she spoke to me about it, and it was late one evening after we had finished organizing community events for members of our community to attend the debate. And we were outside talking, and she told us her plight, her struggles. And I said, wow, okay. I was able, the next day, I believe was the next board meeting, and I was able to rally community members and had a packed board meeting. And that began this journey. When I got there, I quickly realized that it was disorganized, it was chaotic, there
Oh dear.
weren't any leaders, and the board took advantage of this because there wasn't leadership. In any organization, for any organization to survive, there would be an effective leader.
Yeah.
So when I experienced this in the first board meeting, I said to myself, no, this cannot go on. So I filled that void, was able to organize people, and I became the leader, so to speak, of that struggle. That was how it came about, and we became effective. And I had my late brother, Kola Iliomade, join me. When he came, he had been in this struggle. Remember, he had a personal experience because his children were, he had a rough experience with the board regarding his children. So he had a personal reasons to be involved. But while he was there, he quickly realized that it was overwhelming. So he left, and when he came back, it was a whole different, well-oiled machine that was there, and we became partners, and that was how we were able to. So you had two black men
Yep.
that were not only educated, understood, had a good understanding of how the system worked. So
Mm,
we didn't fall into the stereotypical narrative of a black man. So
right.
they had nothing to divide us with. We didn't fit into the box, their own narrative. And it was very difficult for them to put us in a box. And we went, and we were able to move community members, and were able to speak eloquently about the issues. And that was how all of that started.
I think that's fantastic. Like two strong, powerful African men, mobilized, united, know
Yes.
what they're doing. That must have been, and on one hand, as much as I think that's fabulous, and I'm like, yeah, it must have been confusing for them and alienating for them at first because they're like, what do we do here? We're not comfortable with this. And that's exactly the Canadian story I really like to hear because that's sometimes how effective change gets through and it ruffles feathers and it can be done. And that brings us to the advocacy versus the activist piece. You and I have discussed a little bit at length how activism gets this strange sort of word like Greenpeace or somehow some sort of a strange notion to it. But advocacy is a much more endearing and empowering word. Yet they're similar, but they are different. And you as an advocate specifically for proper change and for the dismantling of these prejudice and racist sort of actions that we see often um, is heartwarming actually because that's exactly what we need are people that know what they're doing, they know there's an injustice, they've been called to advocacy work, and they make those changes, those systematic barrier changes that we need, especially in large foundational institutions like our education system, which we know has been founded not necessarily taking immigrant values into account. It's an archaic system that change is quite slow. And I'm wondering if you have any final words on that, and then we're going to maybe segue into some other things that Peel Region can be addressed in Peel Region.
So you're right. Education being the foundational structure upon which so many things are built. If you get it wrong, you're more than likely, in computer language, uh, junk in, junk out. If you get it wrong, expect to get outcomes that are not going to be nice. Um, you know, the word advocate for me and activism, it's one that sometimes, especially activism, doesn't make people feel comfortable. But we are activists in so many issues that may not be, it could be private, it could be public. But when you are fighting for something, when you are advocating, sometimes these words are interchangeable, except as an activist, you are painted as this person that is going to burn down everything if they don't get their way. No, it's not true. Because never in anything I have done have I expressed or supported violence. I have been, understand the political side and understand the activism side. And I am at the middle saying, we all have to come together and understand that there's a need for both parties, and we have to come together to address issues. Now, with activism, sometimes it makes people uncomfortable. But if you're on the side of, if you benefit from that, which majority of people at the bottom of the totem pole will tell you they need these voices. They need these voices because sometimes you have to make people feel uncomfortable by continuously saying the same thing. Does he always produce the answers, the outcomes you want? No. So there need to be the political side, the advocacy side, if I may loosely use that, where you can say, let's come together and find a medium point. I'm not about burning, destroying. No, I recognize that that would not always solve anything.
No.
But if I'm talking to you all the time, I'm bringing you data, I'm telling you, you conduct this, like that of the review the Peel District School Board did, and it showed and supported everything the Black community has always said. There's nothing new. And we're saying, now you know. So please implement some changes. So in every society, we need the advocates, we need the activists. I think there needs to be that peaceful coexistence without the violence to hold those in power accountable.
Those are two really valid points, and sometimes, they're interchangeable, but it never has to be a violence. There's never a need for that. There's always open dialogue and discussion and like-mindedness, but sometimes that's how change gets started and mobilized. And especially, as you said, if you're putting it with the hard science, and it's really hard to refute proper data and science, and people respond better to that than emotional feeling. I think that's a really good approach. Now, speaking about the city of Peel, or the Peel,
the region of Peel.
The region of Peel in the city of Brampton is where I was going. I live right beside the region of Peel. It's actually quite large. The city of Brampton, I've spent some time, and I worked there for 4 years in a South Asian population think tank. And I'm wondering, I personally don't know as much about City Hall and Brampton dealings, and I really should. It's an emerging city in Ontario, the importance of it. And I'm wondering if you can tell me maybe what's kind of going on in City Hall, anything you want to bring up about Brampton itself, or any experiences you have that you would like the audience to know about.
So I want people to know that Brampton or Peel is it's reflective of where Canada is headed in terms of demographics, but some people might feel uncomfortable with a huge immigrant population. The data that I gave you about Peel schools are reflective of the population in its entirety. And the way I want people to see it is, if you have the secondary school students in Peel make up 10%, and the South Asian make up about 45%, look at it from that angle and say, well, they have parents, mom and dad. So you want to look at the numbers. So the racialized students in PL is about 83%, which is reflective of PL to a certain degree, not precisely 85, 60 something percent. So that shift itself, of course, is not making people feel uncomfortable. And what you see within the police force and the leadership in City Hall is about the same statistics that I've given to you.
Right.
In the school system.
Mm-hmm.
So there needs to be diversity.
Okay.
In all of these areas. You cannot continue to have the leadership of the region of Peel or the city of Brampton only reflect a certain demographics of the population. Yeah. In order for you to be able to govern effectively, you need new ideas. And hence the reason why diversity is big. You have other people who can see from an angle where you don't see it. And it's better if that's your population for your leadership, either in policing, in city hall, or in the region, to somewhat mimic your demographics. But that's not what we're seeing. Okay. And when you look at Peel Police, it's one. I have often respected the work of police officers, and I know sometimes they don't get the credit. However, for us to be able to work cohesively, we need to be able to tell each other, this is where you're dropping the ball. How can we fix it? You know, they're inundated with a lot of things that police officers should not be doing. We want to be able to help them move issues to do with mental health away from policing.
Yeah.
And that would make for a better society.
Oh, for sure.
You know, you don't want to be calling police officers to things that they really were not trained for.
No.
You know, and also have a police body that's reflective of the community in leadership and in the ranks and file.
Yeah. I'm wondering if their hiring practices are moving that needle a little bit. I have to look up some more data and research on that, because you're right, I actually don't know. And the police do get an unfortunate rap when it comes to, but I agree with your point about the mental health piece. Not untrained, they're doing the best they can, but those resources need to be allocated to things that should be removed from the policing file in order to have a more cohesive society and for the safety and security of everyone involved. I've seen cases where, you know, there have been mental health calls that have ended up in jail and ended up poorly because of that.
We have, with our population right now, the huge density in Brampton especially, we're seeing a lot of issues that are coming up, which are not uncommon in cities that are growing, like Brampton has grown.
Right.
But there has to be better disbursement of resources to tackle issues. One that has been dear to me is garbage, littering. This has, in a way, connected to Peel region itself. If you come to my city, one of the things you quickly realize that there are residents who are putting garbage, trash material, bulk items on the curb outside of the days in which they're supposed to be picked up.
Ooh.
We have bylaws that says things cannot be put on the curb before 7 p.m. the night before.
Yeah.
We have folks who put things on a Monday, knowing that garbage day is a Thursday morning.
Yeah.
Now, what the region hasn't done and what my councillors have not done is educate people, home buyers. If you're coming into Brampton, any city, and you're purchasing a home, you should be well educated on the days, what goes into what.
Yeah.
Recycling, what goes into the recycling material. On garbage, what goes into garbage. On compost, what are the things that are compostable, so that you don't get it mixed up on what day. So when you educate the citizens, when you educate residents of Brampton and in Peel, they don't do it. We have bylaws, but those bylaws are not enforced. So when you don't enforce them, you don't hold people accountable. Guess what you have? You have chaos. You have people do what they want. So what that is doing to the city is you begin to see trash bulk items, toilet bowls on curbsides. That should not be.
No.
That is not the city we all want to live. And it makes
No.
me wonder, why is the city, why are our councillors, my councillors, especially for Ward 1 and 5, why are they not doing their utmost best to educate, especially the regional councillor who has this portfolio with waste management from the region? Why can we not educate our citizens, our residents properly
Yeah. Yeah.
on this? So you go through education. Now, when they don't comply, then you hit them with the fines. We have bylaws that stipulates what the penalties are.
Yep.
When you don't enforce bylaws properly, you're headed towards chaos.
Yeah.
So this is one issue that is dear to me, amongst others, with infrastructure development, crime, public safety, which is not uncommon with other cities. But
No.
you have to look at it in where you live. If everyone did that, collectively we'll be better.
Yeah.
And those are some of my issues, and not just mine, but the issues of residents of Brampton.
Yeah. And I think that makes a lot of sense too, because not only are those things unsightly, it's also a safety issue, right, for citizens. So you don't want to be coming in and seeing trash. And it's a very simple mandate. I'm wondering why the bylaws are not being enforced. Is it a manpower issue? They're not, just following up on their due diligence. I don't know what the issues are, but I would side with you on that one. It's a safety issue too that people don't realize. You just can't be having things out and about. Bulky items.
We have outgrown. Now, as cities grow, you have to grow too in terms of how you properly develop or disperse resources for certain things. I don't think we have enough bylaw officers to cater for our city. No, we do not.
Yeah.
So you're seeing all this. You're seeing all of this show up on the streets. Now, hospital is another one where we have outgrown.
William Osler?
William Osler, it's another one.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you look at it and say to yourself, I know residents, people don't like to pay a lot in property taxes, but there's a reason why we pay property taxes, to be able to take care of some of these issues, some of these things.
Yeah.
Now, William Osler, that of the hospital falls on the provincial government. Yes. However, I personally believe that there was failure from council in how they addressed the issue with the provincial government.
Okay.
Brampton Civic Hospital, when it was built in 2007, was built to treat 90,000 patients a year. And we gradually went from that to treating 130 patients a year.
Yeah. That's a big jump. I know.
Huge jump. And I believe right now in 2022, our hospital staff are probably seeing way more than 130.
Yeah.
Because when it was built, our population was about 500,000.
Yeah.
Now we're about 700,000 people. And yet we have one hospital.
One hospital. I know people that specifically in Brampton would not even bother going to William Osler. They went straight into like Trillium in Mississauga or something. They weren't even going to risk it. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts, how can that be improved? Because infrastructure takes so long in things like hospitals. Maybe let me rephrase the question. Where would you like to see the growth sort of stabilize in the next 5 years?
We are having a population, when a city grows and it outgrows its resources, that's where we are.
Right.
And when you don't manage properly, you start to deal with all of these things. Now, the issue of healthcare resources, or the shortage in healthcare resources, it's not only to Brampton, but that of Brampton is acute. One hospital. So when you look at some of the measures, the metrics in measuring hospital beds to population, in Brampton, the average in Canada is about 2.5. That means that's hospital bed per capita. So that means 2.5 beds per 1,000 people. In Brampton, we're sitting at 0.9 per 1,000 people.
No.
So that doesn't end there. So for me, I felt in an election year like we just had, what do you think our politicians, our councillors should have done? Go into serious negotiation with the provincial government and say to them, we need another full service hospital with an emergency. But that wasn't done.
No.
We ended up with a 250 bed space hospital as opposed to a 800 at a minimum bed space hospital that would not be ready until 7 years from now.
Yeah, it's a long time.
It's a long time. So by the time that hospital, 250 bed space hospital is ready, we would have outgrown that.
Mm-hmm.
So my question or my concern, not just mine, of residents of Brampton, we're still in the same nightmare of having one hospital service about 700,000 people. Yeah. We're going to be seeing code gridlock, which the hospital has had multiple times. We're still going to be seeing hallway medicine. I believe in 2018, this William Osler treated 4,600 people in the hallway. It's unacceptable.
It's very unacceptable. And that actually struck at the hearts of a lot of Canadians. And I think that the fact is we know that our healthcare, we've always prided ourselves on such things as our healthcare system and, you know, relatively inexpensive education comparatively to other worlds. But the fact of the matter is these things in Canada are collapsing. And if we don't have proper leadership and we don't do these things and properly plan, we're going to end up in a very, very difficult spot across our country. And some we already are in some. And so I'm wondering, with strong leaders such as yourself that have these ideas, these inclusive ideas, these well thought out plans of how we could possibly manage better, you yourself, like, do you have specific political affiliations? And are you potentially planning to run for office or anything like that within the city of Brampton or further that would help your fellow citizens?
I believe we need very strong and effective, vibrant voices in council in the region. I believe it's something that I can do. It's something that there are a lot of people, talent in this city and in this region that can do. But the whole idea with politics sometimes leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. People are driven, people go into politics for different reasons. But if you go into it with the sole idea of serving, then you become productive. And that's not what we are seeing. With regards to my personal desire, for sure. Is this something I'll definitely want to do? It's right there. I am seriously thinking about it. I haven't made that decision yet. But with the collapse in what I'm watching, what I'm seeing in City Hall at the region, I think anyone who has the capability, who has demonstrated that they can work cohesively with people, regardless of what political affiliation you belong, can sit down and bring heads together, should think seriously about running for council. Right now, our council is divided. It's in a stalemate. We're not moving anywhere.
No.
And it hurts because if you can have a bunch of people or councillors that can agree and collectively advance the interest of the people, we will pay dearly. There are a lot of issues that are at stake that are afflicting Brampton now, also with other municipalities. So you need leaders with a foresight, leaders that are capable, leaders that want to work, not those who just want to bask in the title of being a counselor.
Right.
It will not work, and that's what I believe we're lacking. And I'm encouraging other people, especially in my community, because sometimes we see ourselves as maybe we're not good enough. We separate ourselves from the issues, from governance. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm encouraging Black people, I'm encouraging Nigerians, Africans, wherever you are, to pay attention to what is happening in your environment, in your schools, in City Hall, because you're a taxpayer. We own our homes, we pay taxes, our children go to this school, we spend money in our municipalities, various municipalities. So, as such, you owe it to yourself to be part of the decision making. Don't leave it to others and complain.
I think those are exactly the words that I wanted to hear, is that strong, capable, and almost being called again to have it. If you know you're capable and you see these things happening, you almost have a sense of a responsibility, I would anyway, to want to help and do something about it if you're capable and wise. And I think that Brampton does need more people like you and more Nigerians, any immigrant community that has that strong capability to lead and knows that they do, I think is an asset everywhere, especially in governments. Now, I'm wondering too, we're already at 42 minutes, I believe 43 minutes, and I'm so grateful for your time. I'm wondering, is there anything you wanted to talk about that maybe you didn't get a chance to?
No, that's a lot. 42 minutes. I didn't even realize we've been talking for 42 minutes. And I know majority of the people that will be watching this are either in Nigeria, all over Africa. Now, be it virtual, it can be dispersed anywhere. This is more a call to the immigrant community, to Nigerians, to other Africans, that pay attention to what is happening in the cities you live in.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take it for granted that I'm in Canada or I'm in the States, everything is great, and not be a part of the system.
Yeah.
You have to do that. Those who govern us in City Hall, in city halls, are not smarter than you. But when you divorce yourself from municipal issues, provincial issues, and federal issues, you have given the authority to others to govern you. Municipal elections, municipalities are important because they control almost everything you do in where you live. So not participating, not engaging, even at the school board level, you're setting your children up for failure. So all arms, all areas of trustees, school board, municipals, the region, provincial are important. Pay attention, get out of your shells, educate yourself on how the system works so that you can help your children. Now, we don't see too many of us in leadership position. What that tells me is your children are not seeing themselves as being capable of governing. And that's a very sad thing to do. As you start to come out of your shells and participate and educate them, they can see themselves as future leaders. Those would be my words, my closing remarks for members of my community. And I hope they can take this seriously and pay attention. For those people who plan on running, come out and support them and pay attention to what's coming up next.
That's wonderful. I thank you so much for your time. We're very grateful. I'm going to keep an eye on this. I'm going to keep watching Brampton. I'm going to see. It was a pleasure to be able to chat with you, and I hope that you carry on your journey. And thank you so much for your time again. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. You have a fantastic weekend and happy Canada Day.
You too. Thank
All right.
you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.